Hi, this is George Antone here, and hopefully you watched the Secret Formula Part 1. We're going to be talking about Secret Formula Part 2 here. We're going to talk about the solution. So in the first video, we talked about the critical formula that actually affects every single one of us. Whether we like it or not, it affects us, and it proves mathematically why many investors out there, many people, period, will never be able to attain their wealth because you see the formula there. They have to generate so much return just to be able to maintain their purchasing power, and very few people are able to maintain that kind of return on their whole portfolio. In this case now, what we're going to do in part 2 is actually show you the solution. It's extremely elegant, but it's uncomfortable. It's better to know now than 10, 20, 30 years from now. That's why this is so critical that you focus on this. And look, there are solutions for this. But the more you understand the formula, just like Albert Einstein said, the more time you spend on the problem, the more you can appreciate the solution. So with that, let's go ahead and buckle up and continue our exploration of the secret formula, because at the end of this training, you're going to start seeing a solution. And throughout our journey together on this channel, you're going to be finding some very, very impactful solutions, but they all come back from this problem. So understand this problem. And with that, let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so this is the Secret Formula Part 2. Make sure you watch the Secret Formula Part 2. Make sure you watch Part 1. It is critical that you have context. Okay, otherwise this won't make sense. So we talked about a formula that proves mathematically that most people cannot maintain a return to actually improve their purchasing power. Again, here is the quick formula, and we talked about in the previous video. In our example, we picked 6%. We picked, I think, 30% here. Again, you can just plug in whatever numbers, and you get this from your accountant. And in the previous example, we got 8.57%. Okay. So now the question is, how do you beat this? Okay. How do you beat this? Again, let's go back to what Albert Einstein said. Focus more on the problem. The more you understand the problem, the better it is to come up with a solution. So that's why I love spending a little bit more time on the problem and dissecting the problem, because through this understanding the problem is where you start appreciating the solution and what went into thinking about this. Again, I've invested years of my life trying to figure this out. So let's go ahead and look at this number here, this example. So it turns out that there are 3, we call them smart levers. These smart levers, I should put capital letters here. These 3 smart levers help you beat the break even. So let's go ahead and look at these 3 things. I'm going to put them from left to right in terms of impact. I'll explain that. First of all is using debt strategically. So I'm going to use the word strategic debt here. That means you're using debt very, very, very specifically in a way to lower your break even. So I'm going to call it strategic debt, and I'll expand on that. The next thing is compound growth. Compound growth. And the third thing is lowering taxes. Now, I put them in order of most impactful. This is the most impactful. Okay. So this is the least impactful. They're all impactful, but you start with the highest one. So if I had to pick one of them, I would pick this, followed by this, followed by this. Now, let's look at how this works. Obviously, let's look at lowering taxes. If this was 0, if your taxes were lowered, let's just say you went from BI1 minus R, but R, we lowered our effective taxes from 30% to 25%, let's just say. and inflation was 6% still. Now we have 0.06 divided by 1 minus 25%, which is 75%, 0.75. Okay. So now we're going to do some math. Let me just do it on the calculator here really quick. So let's do this. So we're going to go with 0.06 divided by 0.75, 8%. So we did a lot of work to go from 30% to 25%, which takes quite a bit, just to lower this break even. You see, it doesn't have a big impact. You see that? So again, that's why I say lowering taxes is good, but it's not the most impactful. This is the most impactful. I'm going to show you how in a minute, okay? But let's go back to this here. This is how you beat this. So we just talked about one of them here. Again, this is on your whole portfolio. I want to be clear. So some people might say, I'm going to buy some properties or some portfolio, some investments under my tax-free account or whatever, tax advantage environment. And that's fine. This lowers this, but if you gave up debt because you cannot use debt inside that environment, you just lowered this, but you give up the most impactful thing. That's why, so I'm going to say that again. If someone says, I'm going to buy all my assets in a tax advantage account, okay, that's great. So now you lower your effective tax rate. Okay, you lower your effective tax rate. So you buy your assets, whatever they are. But what happens is if you cannot use strategic debt, you just had a big negative impact by not being able to use this. So let's look at what this does here. So this is where things get really interesting. So I'm going to give you a formula here, how I was able to adapt this. So inflation affects your money. Your money. Okay, I'm going to put M for my money. Okay. Divide by 1 minus R. So if this is 100%, it's the same thing. But if I'm using 50% debt, right? I can lower this to 50%. Now let's plug in the same numbers here. 0.06 times 0.5. Again, don't get too worried about the math here. I'm trying to show you something. You will never have to use the math. 1 minus 0.3 for 30%. So let's go ahead and do this together. So 0.06, again, you'll never have to ever do this. I'm just showing you something because I want to back it up with some ahas that you should appreciate. Times 0.5. So on top, you're going to have 0.03 divide by 0.7. So let's do the math here. Divide by 1 minus 0.3 gives you 4.28 or 29% break even. Okay. Now what did we just do? We just lowered our break even from 8.5 to 4.2 by using 50% debt. Or what if you use a little bit more debt? Let's see what happens. I minus M, 1 minus R, 6%. We're going to use now less of our money. So we're going to use 40% of our money in the deal, in our investments. You'll see here what I'm talking about as we progress through this. And then we're going to still use our 30%. So we have 0.06 times 0.4 minus 0.7. 0.06 times 0.4. I'm sorry, 0.4. That's correct. Divide by 1 minus 0.3, which is 0.7. Now we're lowered our break even to 3.42 or 3.43%. So let's look at this for a second. What just happened here? We're saying by using debt strategically, which we're going to expand on in this channel quite a bit, but you have to understand the premise why we're going to be using debt. We just lowered our break even from 8.5 to 3.4. What does this mean? That means we have to generate a 3.43% break even on our whole portfolio just to maintain our purchasing power. And if you want to build wealth, which we all want to, you have to beat this number. Can you beat this number? Well, I can tell you this is a lot easier to beat than this. Okay. In fact, for many people out there, their break even is over 10%. Think about that for a second. They're going to work for the rest of their lives thinking they're building wealth, only to find out years and decades later that they cannot even maintain their purchasing power. This is why you have to understand this formula. Will you ever use this formula? The answer is no. I'm showing you the smart levers that you have to incorporate into your portfolio to make sure that you are lowering the break even. I'm going to be expanding on this in a more realistic way and things that you can relate to so you can understand this. But this is the math behind everything. I'm going to be creating more videos to showcase this in more real life scenarios. Okay. But here's what the takeaway I want you to get. The most important takeaway is that the break even can be broken, can be made to work for you by incorporating those 3 smart levers. And the 3 smart levers, I'm listing them in terms of impact. You start with debt, compound growth, lowering taxes. Now, here's the thing. A lot of our clients or a lot of our members, what we do is we use software and technology. We use technology to combine these 2 things to make this extremely, extremely, extremely powerful. This, combining these in an optimal way, requires computing power. But this is now you start seeing why we use technology in all our solutions is because you want to optimize these 2 things to work together. I can expand on that a little bit later. So this looks great. Okay, you're getting it. This is number 1. So here's what I want you to realize. The whole world is impacted by this, what we call the wealth equation. Okay, and it turns out there are people on the paying side and many investors, and there's the receiving side. It turns out that there are many forces out there. For example, inflation, interest, taxes, opportunity cost. Most people on the planet are working, investing, but they're actually on the paying side. That means inflation is affecting them negatively. Now you understand why. Taxes, interest, they're on the paying side of interest. Opportunity cost, that means they're not using their money efficiently. And very few people on the planet are actually on the receiving side. What does that mean? That means as inflation goes up, some people are here. They build wealth faster by inflation going up. They're using this math. They are on the receiving side of interest. I'm going to be expanding on all of this here in future videos. They cannot be on the receiving side of taxes, but they can lower their taxes. Now you understand why, right? And they are using their money extremely efficiently. Okay, this is the dividing line here. The dividing line to go from the paying side to the receiving side is incorporating these 3 smart levers. Most investors think they're building wealth, but they're actually moving backwards. So when I say paying side and receiving side, what am I talking about? You see these people here on the paying side are giving their purchasing power to the people on the right side. They're actually throwing it over and saying, here's my wealth. Wealth in terms of purchasing power. They are literally saying, here it is, take it. And the reason is because the people on the receiving side are using these 3 smart levers. Okay. So this is number 2 for you to be aware of, the wealth equation, and ask yourself, where am I? Am I on the paying side or am I on the receiving side? Again, I'll expand on this in a future video. Finally, I want to bring something up because I know this always comes up, and I'm going to bring it up right now. And this is the 3rd thing. People see debt here and they think, you know what? Hold on a second. I'm not comfortable with debt. And I'm not either. Okay, I'm not comfortable with debt. But This is how the system works, and we have to use debt to our advantage, because debt is what's hurting you. All the money being printed by the feds is actually what's causing inflation to go up. So the way you fight back is by using the same thing they're using against you. But let's look at debt here. So when debt goes up, when you increase your debt, guess what goes up? Risk, meaning uncertainty. Uncertainty. Okay, so that's what's uncomfortable. But what happens, your break even goes down, like we're finding out. Your return, if you know what you're doing, goes up. Okay, so the question is, knowing that risk goes up, that makes people uncomfortable. And the reason is, and this is something to be aware of, what you have to do is you have to study debt. Because what you'll find out, there are ways to make debt work for you. Don't just ignore it. You can actually manage this risk significantly, because without understanding this, you're going to be losing anyways. You are on the paying side, and you cannot even beat the break even. There is no other way, folks, to beat it. So these are the three levers, and you have to study these. Okay, and so the more, as an investor, the more you understand and you study debt, the more you realize how powerful it can be for you to help you build or increase your purchasing power significantly and get your goals much faster. Don't just ignore it, because there are some elegant ways you can study this. And you almost have to, now that you understand this. So the third thing is to study debt and make it work for you. This is why Robert Kiyosaki talks about you have to understand debt. You have to understand debt. And this explains what Robert Kiyosaki has been saying from the beginning. Okay, so with that, hopefully this helps you guys. You can see now that this affects every single one of us. And if you don't do something about it, whether you like it or not, you're going to end up being on the paying side. If you do nothing about it, you're going to stay on the paying side. That means you're going to be working for the rest of your life, investing, thinking you're moving forward, when you're actually moving backwards financially. Your purchasing power is going down, even though you're making money. You're not making enough to maintain buying the same stuff you were able to buy last year and a decade ago. Okay, so now you see the complexity of investing, and now you can understand why we teach this, why we're sharing this information with you for free, because you have to open your eyes and understand the problem with the way the system works. That's why we have to use computers. That's why we built technology to solve things like this. Okay, this is what we do as a company. We build the technology to help us understand and figure this out. So hopefully you enjoy that content. If you want more of that, go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel. We are big believers in sharing content and training that can change your life. Also, for anyone wanting a copy of the drawing I just did, download the PDF of that right below this video. You'll see a link in the description. Go ahead and download that. In fact, I would highly recommend you read some of the description we have, because we always have links to videos in there that might be very appropriate or correspond to the one you just watched. Now, as a company, all we do day in and day out is we help people like you start seeing a transformation in their life. We focus on implementation. So anytime you're ready, we're here for you. Go ahead and click on the link below and let us know when you're ready, and we'll get you going. Okay. So with that, I'll see you in the next video.